Okay, Tov. Today's daf is daf Chaf Aleph, and we're up to Lema Misayele. This is a machlokas between Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yehuda Nisia with regard to the case in the Mishnah of somebody who hears somebody else. Shimon hears Reuven say already Nazir, and he says Vani, and then Levi says Vani, and they're all Nazirim. And the Kabbalah's Naziris is valid. And according to Reish Lakish, this only operates if he was matfis toch kidei dibur, which is kidei sheila shalom. And Rabbi Yehuda Nisia disagrees. So lema misayele. Shall we bring a proof to support Reish Lakish from the Mishnah itself? It says, Misha Amar Hareini Nazir v'shama chaver v'amani. And then another person says Vani, V'sulo. So the Gemara asks the following question here. Why is it that the Mishnah only mentions two people that added Vani? Nothing more than two. According to Rabbi Yehuda Nisia, you could have three people trying to be matfis and even more, because there's no limitation, there's no time limitation. But it works out very beautifully according to Reish Lakish, because according to Reish Lakish, since Kidei Sheila Shalom is the limited amount of time for being matfis, therefore you can only have, let's say, the time it takes to say those three words, Shalom Alecha Rebbe, that's 3 words, 3 seconds. And therefore, you're going to need a maximum of another person who said Ani and another person who said Ani, and that's it. Because after that, the time has expired. But the Gemara rejects this proof and says, Tana ki rochel lichashiv v'lezel question mark. Does the Tana have to be like a peddler and go through every single, who goes around all the cities and tries to sell his wares and his goods? In other words, that even according to Rabbi Yehuda Nisia, although it's true that you can have 1 and 2 and 3 people saying Vani and even a 4th person saying Vani, they're all Nazirim. But nevertheless, the Tana didn't have to go through and count every single case. It's not like a Rochel. He wants to abridge and have a limited amount of words. So the Gemara immediately rejects this. And the Gemara says, V'lisni chad, if you're saying that Tana ki rochla, the Tana doesn't want to be like a Rochel, and therefore it's very abridged, then why does he just mention one Vani, Ulashmin and Hani? And from the one Vani, we would understand that there could be others who could also say Vani, and you could have many matpisim, and it could be even after Tochidei Dibur. But from the fact that the Mishnah mentions Shtei Pa'amim, twice it says Vani, it would seem that the Mishnah is being makpid to count 2. And it's coming to exclude others. And that makes sense only according to Reish Lakish. So the Gemara answers, Hachinami, you're right. The Mishnah could have gotten away with the word Vani once, according to Rabbi Yehuda Nisia. And there would be no loss whatsoever. So why then does the Mishnah mention Vani twice? Mishum de Katani Seifa, in order to teach us the Chiddush of the Seifa. And that's the domino theory that we mentioned yesterday. And what is that? Huta Rishon, Hutru Kulon. That once you remove Reuven, who is the original person who declared Hareini Nazir, then the entire, it's like a deck of cards, everything collapses. Hutru Kulon. And Huta Achron, but on the contrary, if the last one, we'll call him, let's say Yehuda, if he was the one who said Vani and he now was Matir his Neder, he went to a Chacham, then Ha'achram Mutter, he himself is Mutter, V'kulam Asurim. But the ones who came before him, the Rishon and the Sheni, they're still Asur. It's only the Achram. And from the fact that it says that there's a Rishon and an Achron, is Michlal Dikam Tzoi. We know that there's someone right there in the middle. And that person in the middle was Matvis Berishon. Vani, it had to say Vani twice, not to exclude others who would come afterwards. But Vani is ordered to set up a Rishon, an Emtsoi, and an Achron, such that if the Achron is matter is neder, the Emtsoi still is a Nazir. And if the Rishon is matter the neder, then neither the Emtsoi nor the Achron is a Nazir, because the whole deck of cards falls off. And this, in the Sefer, I had to mention Vani twice. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a Rishon, an Emtsoi, and an Achron. And therefore, in the Reisha, he also mentions Vani twice. Who the Gemara raises the following suffix. There were two people, or more than two people, who heard someone say Hareini Nazir, and each one of them was matvis with the word Vani. And here's the two tzadim of the suffix sad number one, Chad v'chavri mitvis. Each one is being matvis his nazirus on the one who came before him, which means that, let's say Ruvain declared already Nazir, Shimon said Vani, and then when Levi says Vani, his Vani is attached to Shimon. O Dilma, the second side, is become a mitvasi. All those who are being matvis, they're all going directly back to the original Ruvain who declared Hareini Nazir. And L'mayin Afkamina, what's the difference whether you say that he was matvis back directly to the Rishon or the one that came right before him? And the Gemara answers Latfuse umezel, to be mamshich and being matvis. In other words, there are many different people here, and they all are waiting on line to be matvis and to say fa'ani. If we're going to go with the side that says chad b'chavri matvis, that each one is being matvis on the one before him, matfis and v'yazan liolam. This could be on and on, an endless chain of atfasa, because after the Rishon declares Hareini Nazir, then the one who's afterwards could say Vani, and all you need in order to get the one after him to declare Vani Tokadei Dibur is to have Tokadei Dibur, the one who came before him. But if on the other hand they're all being matfis in the Rishon, then Tvei Michdei Kedibur lo matfisin. Once that 3-second period of time of Kedei Sheila Shalom has passed, since the original Ruvain had declared already Nazir, they can no longer be matfis. Why? Because the Atfas has to go directly from Yehuda, Yisachar, Zvulun, etc., all the way to Ruvain, and it's already after Kedei Dibur of Ruvain's declaration already Nazir. What's the answer to this suffix? Toshma. Let's go back to our Mishnah again. And from the Mishnah, perhaps we can answer this question. A man declares Hareini Nazir, Shama Chaver Vamani, and then another person heard and said Vani. Visulo Midi, are there only 3 people here waiting online? Shmami, no, we derive from this Bakama Huda Matvisi, that all those who are waiting online, one after the other to be matvis in this unbroken chain, they're all being matvis back into Reuven. And therefore, by the time you get to man number 4 on the list, who says Vani, it's no longer Tokadei Dibur of Reuven, the original. And that's why the Mishnah had to limit it with 2 people waiting online, that's Shimon and Levi, to be matfis in Reuven. Because only when you get up to Levi can Levi be matfis in Reuven with his Vani, because it's still Tokadei Dibur of Reuven's declaration of Vani Nazir. Listening to Vavani. Once again, as we saw before in the previous Gemara in the Diuk, if you're going to hold that each one is being matfis, standing on the shoulders of the one who came before him, then the Mishnah could have had a whole list of Vanis. It didn't have to limit it to 2 Vanis, because even if there's a 3rd Vani and a 4th Vani and a 5th Vani, etc., there's always a possibility of adding a Vani, Tokadei Dibur, to the one who came before you. And the Gemara questions, again, Tana Kiruchlu L'chashavi Lezel, does the Tana have to go through and mention every single case? It's enough to say twice Vani. So the Gemara asks, V'lis Nichad. So why doesn't it just say 1 Vani? Namely, it should have said Shama Chavera V'yomar Vani and close shop. U'shmainin Kulu. And then we know that each one could be matches on the one who came before him, and this chain could go on and on endlessly. And the Gemara answers, Aidi the Ketani Huta Rishon. Again, we go back to the Sefer, and the Sefer wants to present the domino theory, as we called it, that once you pull out the one that you started with and everything falls and everything collapses, Huta Rishon Hutra Kulam, Huta Achron Achron Mutar V'Kulam Asurim, is Mechal Dika Emtzai, Mushum Hachi Ketani Vani Vani. He wants to set up a chain of three people, meaning there's the first one, then there's the second one, there's the third one. If there's a first and a third, then there has to be a middle one. And we're going to derive from this that if they were matir the first one, then all of them are mutter. So now we're saying that all our fossils go back directly to the Rishon. And that's why we explained in the Reisha that there was a limited amount. But if you're going to tell me that each one is being matfis in the one before, so why did it have to mention only two? And the Gemara answers it mentions only two in order to emphasize that there's an emtzai. And if there's an emtzai, then the emtzai is connected to the Rishon. And now we're saying that the achron is connected to the emtzai. If you remove the Rishon, then you remove everyone, because the emtzai depends on the Rishon, and the achron depends upon the emtzai. So the whole deck of cards collapses. If, on the other hand, only the achron would be mater his nazirus, then the ones who came before him still remain also be nazirus, and that's why the Tana says vani vani only twice, in order to set up this chain of the Rishon, the emtzai, and the achron. Toshma, let's see if we can bring a different raya from our Mishnah. It says Huta Rishon Hutru Kulam. That once the original Ruvain who declared already Nazir was matir his neder, his nazirus, then all those who said Vani are all mutter. That's Shimon, Levi. So it seems to be that the Rishon Hu Desharu Ha Emtzai Lo. That only in a case where the Rishon, that's Ruvain who declared already Nazir, he was matir his nazirus, then the entire deck of cards falls apart. But if the emtzai, let's call him Shimon, he was the one who was matir his nazirus, then lo, then the others are not mutter. So let's say, for example, Levi would still remain a nazir. Ishmamin over Kamam, but this only makes sense if both Shimon and Levi were matfis in the Rishon in Ruvain, and therefore, if Ruvain's Nazirus was Hutar, then Shimon and Levi are mutter. But if on the other hand, Shimon was matir his Nazirus, then Levi still remains also. Why? Because Levi is directly connected to the Rishon, meaning to Ruvain. And the Gemara rejects this proof. I'm going to tell you, Liolam Chad B'Chavri Matfis Ruvain, Shimon and Levi, or each depend on the one who came before, meaning Shimon is dependent on Ruvain, and Levi upon Shimon. Shimon is being matfis in Ruvain, Levi is being matfis in Shimon. Now you're asking me, so why do you mention Dafka the Huta Rishon, even if Huta Emtzai, that should be matir the Shlishi? Ivy the boy lemiste Hutri Kulam, since the Tana wants to teach me the Chiddush that in a situation where the Rishon was matir his nazirus, they were all mutter. That's Shimon is mutter, Ruvain was matir, and then Shimon is mutter, and then Levi's mutter. So therefore, he mentions the Mishnah mentions the case where the matir was the Rishon. The Rishon was matir is nazirus. To eat Tani Emtzai, the Mishnah was afraid that if it would write that the Emtzai, that Shimon was matir his nazirus, then you might come to some ridiculous conclusion that Hutru Kulam, but that can't be, because Hika Rishon de lo Mishteri, for sure the Rishon is not mutter. So again, Levi is dependent upon Shimon. Shimon, when he's matir, is memela. Levi is also mutter, because Chad bechavri matfis, each one is matfis and the one that came before him. You'll ask me, why didn't the Mishnah mention the case where the Emtzai, that Shimon was matir is nazirus mishum hakik tani Rishon, he mentions only in our Mishnah that the Rishon was matir. He doesn't mention that the Emtsoi was matir, because he wants to get a situation in which all of them are mutar. But in Echinami, you don't have to have the case where the Rishon was matir in order to set up that chain reaction, because even in the Emtsoi, Shimon was matir, that would already create a chain going the other direction, which means that Levi would be mutar. Because kol chad v'chavri matfus. Let's try a different angle and bring a raya from our Mishnah. Toshma, the Mishnah says that hutar achron mutar v'kulam asurim. If Levi was matir his nazirus, then although Levi is mutar, but Reuven and Shimon are still asur. They're still in the status of nazirus. Delo ika achrina basrei. And lo hitfis od echad achron, meaning the implication of the word achron is that no one came after him. So it's just Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. So what does this mean? Let's be medayik from the Mishnah of Aval Emtsoi. If the Emtsoi, that Shimon was matir his nazirus, the Ika Achrina Basrei, there's somebody behind him, and Mishtere. In other words, when the Mishnah uses the word Achron, it means the last one was the only one who was matir his nazirus, but anyone else who's matir his nazirus would be matir the one that came after him. Each one is matfis on the one that came right before him, not back directly to the Rishon. Therefore, only in the case of Hutar Achron, then the Mishnah says kulam asur, meaning the ones who came before Levi, that's Reuven and Shimon, are asur. But if, by implication, if Shimon, the Emtsoi, was matir his nazirus, then Levi as well would be mutar. Again, if all of them would be matfis directly to Reuven the Rishon, then the Achron would not be mutar, even if the Emtsoi was matir, right? Because the Achron would not be mutar because the Achron, that's Levi, was matfis directly to Reuven, and therefore, even though Shimon was matir his nazirus, that would have no impact on Levi. But the implication of our Mishnah is that if there would be an Emtsoi who was matir, then the one who came after him would be mutar. So that means chad v'chavri matfus. I'm going to argue, says the Gemara, rejecting your proof that everyone is being matfis directly in Reuven, and therefore, if Levi, I'm sorry, again, I said Levi and I meant to say Shimon. If Shimon the Emtsoi was matir, then Levi would be also, because Levi has a direct relationship to Reuven and he skips over Shimon. Umay achron diktani. So what does the word achron mean in the Mishnah? It means Emtsoi. He's called the achron. Why? Because he, relative to the one who came before him, he's called the Achron. Even though he's the Emtsoi and the someone who came after him, but he's still called the Achron vis-a-vis Reuven, vis-a-vis the Rishon. And therefore, even if the Emtsoi would be matir, nevertheless, kulam asurim, because they weren't tola than nazirus, they weren't mafis in the Emtsoi, but rather they were all being mafis directly to the Rishon, because we're holding now the Kama Mitfasin. And the reason why the Tana had to say Hutar Achron, and he didn't say Hutar Emtsoi, is either the Tani Rishon, since in the Reisha you had to say Rishon, to teach you that the entire chain collapses, is Tana Seifa. Even in the Seifa he writes Achron. Toshma, let's quote a Brisa. The Sanya Behedu, we have a Brisa that says explicitly, Hutar Rishon Hutru Kulam, Hutar Achron Achron Mutar V'Kulam Asur. Oh, that alone we have in the Mishnah. But what does the Brisa add? Hutar Emtsoi is a menu lamata mutar. If Shimon, the Emtsoi, was matir his Nazirus, then anyone who came after him, let's call him Levi, is mutter as well. Right? That's going to be Shema Mino Chad B'Chavri Matfus. But let's go on. The Bryce continues. Heimenu Lamala. However, if Shimon was matir his Nazirus, anyone who came before him, let's say Reuven, would be mutter. Or let's say if Levi was matir his Nazirus, then Shimon who came before him, that's called Heimenu Lamala, would, by virtue of the fact that he said Vani, would be awesome. Shema Mino Chad B'Chavri Matfis, we see from here that each one is being matfis in the one who came before him, and therefore huter emtsai heimenu lemata muter. The Gemara says Shema Mina. We see here clearly from this brisa that since huter emtsai, all those who came after him are muter, and the reason for that is because it's chad b'chavrei matfis. If it would have been the rishon he matfisim, then the din would be that even after the emtsai is matir, the one after him would be aser because he was matfis directly, skipping over the head of Shimon to Reuven. So the final conclusion so far in this Gemara, and that's what I think is the final conclusion, l'halacha l'maisa, is chad b'chavrei matfis, which means that if the emtsai is matir's nazirus, then memela the achron who came after him is also mutter. At this point, the Gemara goes back to the Sefer of HaMishnah. In the case where the first one, Reuven said already Nazir, Shimon listens to Reuven, Shomach Haver, V'Omer, and he declares, Pi kipiv, Sa'ari kisa'aro. And the Mishnah says that that statement, that declaration is considered a Kabbalah's Nazirus. And for all intents and purposes, it has the same halacha as Vani. So Gemara is not happy with this. Mishum di Omar pi kipiv usaari kisaro hare Nazir. He becomes a Nazir. He doesn't have to say anything beyond that. And now the Gemara is going to offer a stira from a brisa.